In this lesson, we are going to be looking at dividing fractions and mixed numbers, so dividing all types of fractions. And this was probably the heaviest section in our study guides. Where we started in this section was with diagrams. In this lesson, we're not going to look particularly at diagrams, although they are very useful for kind of introducing and understanding the topic. There's two methods that we looked at. One is the common denominator method, and for the sake of not getting confused, I'm just going to suggest if you like the common denominator method, which is a totally viable, fantastic method that you see page 224 in your math textbook. But the method that I'm going to focus on and suggest that if you're a little bit confused about dividing fractions is called multiplying by the reciprocal. And there was some justification given to you throughout your study guide as to this method. So the first thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to do two examples along the way as we do this, is much like we did with multiplying, which is kind of helpful. We're actually going to simplify how we deal with fractions here, is we're going to make any mixed numbers or whole numbers into improper fractions. So much like with multiplying, that was the first step because we couldn't multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators unless we had improper fractions. The same rings true for the initial step of dividing fractions, is any whole numbers or mixed numbers have to be improper fractions. So these two here, the whole number 9 as an improper fraction is 9 over 1, and the mixed number 2 1/4 as an improper fraction is 9 over 4 because it's two groups of 4 plus 1. So that's the first thing you do. However, what you don't do in the next step is just divide the numerators and divide the denominators. That would be an improper method of dividing fractions. So the second thing we do, which I actually have a rhyme for, and you might want to come back and watch this a few times, and reciprocal was also defined in your study guide, but you're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction, and you might want to highlight the second fraction, okay? And the rhyme that I have here in red might be helpful for lots of you because it rhymes and that's helpful, is dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second, that's called making the reciprocal. When you flip a fraction, you're making the reciprocal. Flip the second and multiply. So dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second and multiply. So let's see what that looks like. So that rhyme looks like what I'm going to do here in red. So flip the second. So I'm going to convert the 4 over 5 to 5 over 4. That's called the reciprocal. And I'm going to change this to a multiplication problem. Okay? So same thing in the other example is to flip the second and multiply. So 9 over 4 becomes 4 over 9. And the dividing sign becomes multiplication. So that's where that comes into play, is the red here in the lesson. So first thing to do, any mixed or whole numbers become improper fractions. Next is flip the second and multiply. So the first fraction remains the same. It's just the second one that gets flipped. So 9 over 1 stays 9 over 1. And the next step is, now that it's a multiplication problem, that should feel comfortable to you if you go back to the previous lesson. So I'll remind you that once we have just improper fractions or proper fractions and it's multiplication, we can just multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So multiply the numerators, the tops, and multiply the denominators. Okay, so multiply the numerators, 2 times 5, multiply the denominators, 3 times 4, and that's 10 over 12. And if you reduced it, because 2 goes into each of those, your best answer is 5/6. Okay, and in this other example, multiply the numerators, 9 times 4, multiply the denominators, 1 times 9, and we get 36 over 9. 9 goes into each of those, which then is 4 over 1. Or, since it's 4 wholes, because the denominator of 1 means it's a whole number, it could be 4. So you might want to review, go back, pause, and review this lesson. So the 3 things to do are right here. If you have mixed or whole numbers, make them improper. then multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So flip the second fraction and change the dividing into multiplying, and then multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. And finally, the final key idea here in this lesson is to always represent the answer in lowest terms.